With all of that said, those of you that are new to these classes, I want to point out that I'm going to cover quite a bit of material. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, but I expect you will interrupt me if you don't understand it, or ask questions either during or at the end, where we'll have time for Q&A. At the end, after we cover this topic of passing and traffic management on track, we will do a turn-by-turn of VIR and talk about the specifics of driving the track. But so let's dive in. Passing and traffic management, and the normal disclaimer, many of you have seen this before, that basically says, if you try something you learned tonight and it doesn't work out, it's your fault. It's not my fault. It's not NNJR's fault. We're all driving on track. We know there's a certain amount of risk involved. We all assume that. So what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about the basics of driving, dealing with traffic on track, how to get comfortable, in specifically how to be passed and how to pass. So, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. So before we dive into that, I'm going to do a quick poll here. So I just started up a poll, and there's 2 questions. So humor me and click the run group that you're assigned to at VIR, and then the number of events you've done prior to this one at VIR. And that'll give me, and in a second you, when I share the results, a sense of the level of experience that we have on the call tonight.
Bill?
Yeah.
Craig did not send out the run group list yet.
Well, the instructor assignments are not out yet.
Yeah, but you don't know what run group you're in.
You do if you look on Motorsport Reg. There's a list on Motorsport Reg.
I think in the track pack he sent out, it's the last
right here.
That's true. The track pack just came out too. Yeah, that's right.
I didn't see it on there.
Yeah, it just came out.
It's at the end. It's at the end.
In the last hour or so. Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay, you're right.
Yep. All right. So we have a real mix. Let me end this and I'll share the results so you can see what I'm seeing. So we have people on the call tonight in every run group at the track. So that's interesting. And we have 9 people who've never been to VIR before, and 12 people who've only been there once or twice. So this class tonight is really oriented to students, to people with less experience driving on track and passing, but I'm sure those of you with more experience will take away some tips that you can apply as well. So that's helpful to me, as well as I understand who's on the call tonight. So with that, we're going to move ahead and talk about passing and traffic management. And basically, it should be obvious, but they determine safety, but they also drive your attitude as a driver on track. Yeah. Because if you're being held up or not getting passes, or conversely, if you're bothered by traffic behind, that affects your attitude, takes away from the fun factor on track. The track pack that just came out talks a lot about courtesy for both drivers being passed and taking a pass. But at the end of the day, passing is all about communication and cooperation. In specifically, both drivers need to be on the same page, need to have the same expectations. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is how to make that happen.
Okay, I got that.
So, basics of passing on track. The first and foremost rule is we never pass without a signal. And if you think about, if you're a new driver on track, like some of you are, you're excited about driving on track, you're driving fast, you're taking advantage of a closed track, but we're also there with other cars. Well, how do we make that safe? Well, we make it safe by making sure that both drivers always know what's going on. You never take a pass without a signal. You never pass without one. And that's a rock solid rule that if you violate it is a serious violation that will result in black flags and long conversations with the chief instructor. So that's really, really important. Those of us that have driven on track for a long time take it for granted, but that is just such a foundational element of driving on track. We sometimes gloss over it. Now, the mechanics of driving on track, one clear signal for every car that you want to send around. If you're giving a pass signal, you get to continue to drive the normal line. You do not move over to be polite. You want to be predictable. If you're giving a pass signal, the car taking the pass is expecting you to stay, where you were supposed to be, online. And you're expected to give a lift, especially if the car behind has less horsepower. So the other side of that coin is the overtaking car always goes offline. And that means you will often enter the following corner offline. You won't be where you would like to be to enter the corner. And pass signals as soon as you can practically do them. Now, the maintain your line and always offline, there are minor exceptions to that. And the VIR does have one exception to that on the front straight. We'll talk more about that later. But and that's always covered in the driver's meeting and so on. But maintaining your line, going offline, those are essential elements of passing on track. So if you're one of the new folks on the call tonight, when you come to the track, you're focused on learning the line, learning how to use the gas pedal and the brakes and the steering in a new way when you're on track versus driving on the street. You're having to know flags and flag stations. What you're not expecting is, oh my God, there's all these other cars on track at the same time I'm out there. And this is always a surprise to new students when they show up at the track, because they've been excited, they're focused on the track itself, but they're not thinking about the fact that they're sharing the track with other cars. And so a big part of traffic as a new student is how do you get comfortable? Well, here's some suggestions. You can prepare in advance by learning about the track, line and reference points, but also learn the passing zones. And VIR, like most tracks, has passing zones where you can only pass on one side. So those are some of the things you can learn in advance. And there's tools to help you with that. There are videos. If you go to the NNJR website, we have not only the track map, we have a video that you can watch, and we have a very detailed turn-by-turn document, which we'll talk more about later. But there's a lot of information that you can and should look at before you ever get to the track. And then if you're a new student, when you get to the track, your instructor is going to help you. In fact, they're going to monitor in the mirror the traffic that's behind, and so that you don't have to worry as much when you're initially getting comfortable learning the line and those other things. Your instructor is going to help you. As the event goes along, you can start to give and take signals on the straightaways, and by the end of 3 days, you'll probably be able to do it yourself. And if you're a driver who has more experience, then obviously you may not need the instructor's help, but your instructor is always there to help you be aware of what's going on behind you as well as who's in front. So that's the beginning of how we get comfortable. But let's get a little more granular. Yeah, passing, whether we're taking a pass or giving a pass, it starts with vision. We have to see what's going on. And that means we have to be aware of the cars behind us, the cars ahead of us, and during a pass. And we're going to talk about the mechanics of all of that. So let's get started. The first thing, and some of you have heard me say this several times before, so bear with me because I'm sure Tim and others, this is a broken record. Mirrors have to be adjusted correctly. So I'm going to take 2 minutes here and tell you how to adjust your mirrors in a way that you will not have a blind spot, so that you can watch what's going on. Start adjusting your mirrors by seating yourself in the car completely back in the seat the way you would be on the track. You know, shoulders back against the seat, you know, your left foot on the dead pedal and so on. Adjust the rear view mirror. It's probably pretty good. You want to see as much of the back window as you can. You want to see as far as possible behind the car. So angle it up if you need to make sure that you can see as far back as possible. But the key thing is the left side mirror and the right side mirror. So we want to adjust the left side mirror. We want to push it out a lot further than you probably have it. So we do that by moving our head against the driver's window and pushing the mirror out until you can just barely see the back corner of the car. We're going to do the same thing on the right side. Lean your head under the rearview mirror, push that mirror all the way out. And when you sit back up doing this adjustment in your garage or in your driveway, you will see nothing in those mirrors. You won't see your car. But what will happen is, instead of the way they were adjusted, where you have a blind spot, and this applies whether you're on 287 or at VIR, you know, if your mirrors are adjusted like most people have them, you have a big blind spot that can hide a whole car. Adjusted this way, there is no blind spot. And you can, if a car is behind, you will see them back in the distance in the rearview mirror. And then as they get closer, assuming they're coming up on the right side, for example, you will see them in the right side mirror, and you will see them in the right side mirror all the way until they're even with your shoulder. And you may have to tweak the adjustments a little bit, but this really works. I cannot emphasize how important this is on the track and frankly on the street. It's a huge safety issue on the street, you know, not having to turn your head to make sure there's somebody hiding in your blind spot. It's one of those things, when I learned about it a few years ago, I said, why did I not learn this, you know, many, many years ago to help all of us be safer on the road? So, so make sure the mirrors are adjusted. Mirrors are a really big part of being aware of what's going on around you on the track, because we absolutely have to be aware of what's going on behind. You know, the objective is to never be surprised by a car that's behind you. Easier said than done, because it happens to all of us sooner or later, but that's what we try to make happen. Now, we're talking about mirrors. What's the most important time to look in the mirror? So I'm going to put up another poll here. And let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So I just put it up. So choose one, the most important time to look in your mirrors on the track. And there's, I'll give you just a second. I could have made this multiple choice, but that would have made it less interesting. So, okay. All right. So I'm going to end that. We'll share the results. You know, the majority of people said at the beginning of a straightaway, at the beginning of a passing zone, and that's a that's a reasonable answer. But we'll come back to this in just a second. So let's see. Oops. I need to get this out of my way. All right, so we're going to talk about passing basics. When to look in the mirrors, how to check the mirrors, how to give a pass signal, where to give pass signals, when to give pass signals. So when should we check the mirrors? Well, entering a passing zone is obviously a time to look in your mirrors. And as soon as your car is straight exiting the corner, before then, if you can, obviously. But in many ways, the most important time to look in your mirrors isn't at the beginning of a passing zone, because everybody kind of knows to do that. The most important time is at the end of a passing zone. At the end of a straightaway, as you're entering the braking area for the next corner, you should be looking in the rearview mirror, and you should know how many cars are back there, how far away are they, how fast are they closing on you? Because this is where many people miss, and get surprised by cars that are behind. And the same applies in the middle of a longer passing zone. And we have long passing zones, 2 of them at VIR, especially the back straight, huge long passing zone. We have to look many times in that passing zone to see who's back there, how fast are they coming. So the poll was a bit of a trick question, but I put it up to emphasize that the obvious is not sufficient when it comes to looking in the mirrors. We'll say more about that in a minute. During a pass, we want to look in the mirrors to be aware of what's going on as a car is going past us or we're going past a car. But during a corner, no. In a no passing zone, there are several connected corners at VIR where no passing is allowed. Forget about the mirrors. Don't be distracted, even if there's a car right on your bumper. They can't pass. You can't give a pass signal. So ignore looking in the mirror. And I'll show you an example of that after a bit. So how do we look in the mirrors? We do it with frequent, quick glances at that rearview mirror. And if there's a car there, we do a second glance to look for the details. We use the side mirrors when cars are close, passing, and so on. But the rearview mirror is really the essential part here, because it's the way we judge how many cars are back there, how far away they are, and so on. Has to be a habit, but it's not a, I'm going to take my eyes off the road for a second or two. It's a quick glance. And again, I'll show you an example. Here's a static picture of me glancing in the mirror on the front straight at VIR. I'll show you a video that shows that a little more clearly in a minute. So how do we give passing signals? Well, as early as we can, but make sure it can be seen. A good way to do that is to wear gloves that are a different color than your car. And you certainly want to get your arm fully out. One clear signal per car. And that means pulling your hand back inside the car, between signals, not waving your hand, assuming, because we've all seen, those of us who have driven a lot, have all seen examples where a driver waved their hand, giving a pass signal, and 2 or 3 cars went past because they all thought they got pass signals. So bring that hand and arm completely inside the car between signals. And again, you're going to give a lift if there's a car behind, and you want to keep an eye on those cars going by. Some things not to do. You never race the car that you've given a signal to the next corner. Now, that's why we give a lift. We want that car gone out of your way so you can both drive without worrying about the other car. At the same time, if there is a faster car behind, don't hold them up. Give them a signal, send them around. Those are examples of what we call aggressive driving, which is simply not acceptable. So here's a so-so example of a left side pass signal. This driver has a blue shirt or driving suit in a silver car, so a little bit of contrast, not as much as if, say, it were a red, shirt. Not a very good point. He's just stuck his hand out the window, but it counts as a left side pass signal. This is a signal I got at VIR that I took. So I knew he wanted me to pass on the left, but could have been better. Here's some other pass signals. The one on the white car is giving a signal on the right. He's pointing over the roof, so that's pretty good. The black car is giving a signal out to the left. Does not have his arm all the way out the window. Again, not pointing very clearly, but we can see it. We can see the signal and make it work. There certainly are lots better examples, but these are some that I was able to grab quickly. So where do we give a pass signal? Well, obviously getting into a passing zone, that's at the beginning of one, that's the obvious. But the middle of a passing zone, as a car closes up behind, and this is really important at VIR since we have these long passing zones. So you have to be aware of the cars coming up behind you in these passing zones. And sooner or later, we're all going to get surprised by a car that we didn't think anybody was behind us. We looked in the rearview mirror. Oh my God, there's a car there. Where did he or she come from? Well, if you're in the middle of a passing zone, it's easy. Give them a pass signal and they'll be gone. But if you're approaching the end of a passing zone, now it requires judgment. If it's too late, then you're going to have to wait to give the signal. But never in the brake markers or approaching the brake markers. That's far too late to give a pass signal. So passing zones at VIR. So there's a bunch of them. The back straight, which is very long, is a passing zone on the left side only. And I'll show you examples of this in a minute. But this straight goes on forever. We come on to it out of Oak Tree where track out puts us on the left. We want to immediately come to the right to give a signal on the left. The front straight, the pit straight, is also a passing zone on the right side. And in this case, if you notice the kink here near the 18 on this map, if we give a pass on the right, we have to stay left a little bit at that kink to let the car go by. I'll show you an example of that. There are passing zones between turns 1 and 2 and turns 3 and 4. 3 and 4 is on the left. Between 1 and 2 could be on either side, typically on the left, but could be on either side. Those are very short passing zones. Your instructor will work with you to use those because it's important to use them to get cars by if they're behind. But for students, they're typically one car at a time, in those short passing zones. The chute after the snake between turns 6 and 7 is a left side only passing area. Easy place to get 1 and even 2 cars past. And then the last but not least, after turn 10, South Bend is a passing zone. I suggest you give a pass on the right there. It's not mandatory, but it's a lot easier for students to give a pass on the right between 10 and 11. Now, that all sounds good, right? What does it look like in practice? So I'm going to play a video here. And in this video, I'm entering turn 4A. so this is the beginning of a no passing area until we get to the snake. So, so you're going to notice that I do not look in the mirrors for the first part of this video. So I'm not looking in the mirror because this is not a passing area. So I'm just concentrating on driving through the snake at this point. But at this point, as I'm beginning to get to the exit, I glance in the mirror because there's a passing zone coming up. And in fact, I give a pass signal and I'm watching the car go by. Now I'm entering the climbing S's, which again are not a passing area. So I don't have to look in the mirror because no one can pass here. Now we're approaching turn 10. And I glance in the mirror before the corner to see who's behind. And I give a pass signal. And I glance in the mirror exiting the corner to see what else is going on. Now I'm concentrating on Oak Tree, getting around the corner. And now as I'm exiting Oak Tree, I'm glancing in my mirror to see who's behind. Now this is the long passing zone that I've been talking about, the back straight or main straight at VIR. You're going to watch me look in the mirror. I don't have near as much horsepower as some of these cars. So on this drag strip, they're going to go past me and I'm giving pass signals and watching in the mirror. Now we're entering a section where there's no passing. This is the roller coaster at the top of the hill. And entering what's called hog pen. But again, no passing in the curves here until we get down to the front straight, which starts right here. And now I check the mirrors entering the front straight. And I've given a pass signal, so I'm watching that car go by. I'm also staying left. I'm not going all the way to the right there in order to leave room for that car to go by me on the right. The normal line would have been all the way up to the right there. So one example of passing and how it's done. So when do we give a passing signal? A car shows up that wasn't there before. Pretty easy, right? But the key thing is, even if you think you have more horsepower and you can go faster down the back straight, you need to give them a pass signal. Because if they caught you, they're faster than you are. And if you let them by, you probably never see them again. Even if it's a lower horsepower car, they need you to give them a lift and let them go by. And that's doubly true on these long straightaways. Now, if you get held up by traffic, do you give a pass signal? That becomes a judgment thing, and experience is going to help you. And we'll talk more about, trains or big, stack ups of cars in a minute. But there are things you can do to help get yourself ready for being aware of what's going on around you. And you can do some of this just in your daily driving on the street. You can get in the habit of scanning the mirrors. You can count the cars behind you and beside you. Try to remember the types of cars and the colors. Good exercise to help you get better at using the mirrors to know what's going on behind and around. On the track, we can think about describing the cars, again, colors, types, at the end of a straightaway or in the middle of a straightaway. But focus on how far behind, are they getting closer or further away? And again, we're going to want to use all the mirrors when the cars are close, either left, right, and center. Now that's from the point of view of the car giving a pass signal. How do you get and take a pass signal? Well, you have to present yourself. And you have to do that at the right time. So that means in a passing zone, not before. And when you do get to a passing zone, put yourself squarely behind the car in front. If you put yourself to the right or left of that car expecting a pass, they may not see you. They may not have their mirrors adjusted properly, or they may not be looking at the right time. You need to be squarely behind so that you're right in the middle of their rearview mirror and wait for the pass signal. When you do get the pass signal, pass immediately. No hesitation. Pull out, foot on the floor, go. Sometimes beginner drivers will hesitate, and that makes it hard for both drivers. If you've been given a pass signal, take it and go. Obviously not too close to the car, and be aware of the other cars around if there's multiple cars, but get past the car as quickly as you can. If you have time, a nice thank you wave is always appreciated. And a point that many drivers don't realize, if driver A gave you a pass signal and they show up in your mirror later in that session or in another session, return the favor, give them a pass. And that happens very often. In fact, it can happen that you trade back and forth. If one of you is faster in one section and the other one's faster in a different section of the track, but going at about the same pace. Other things that happen, some drivers warm up, take the first several laps, working their way up to their pace, whatever it is. They may be slower in the first few laps, faster in the last several laps. So again, this is not a black and white that if they gave you a pass signal once, you don't have to let them by. Some things not to do. Chop the car off. I'll show you an example of that. Never flash the lights, honk the horn, weave or tailgate. Not that anybody here would ever do that, but there are people who get impatient. And also very important from a safety point of view, if you catch somebody near the end of a passing zone, do not expect to automatically get a passing signal. Maybe you think there's time to go past, but they may not be comfortable with that, or it may really be way too late to be safe. So late passes are oftentimes very problematic for both drivers, because a late pass can cause both drivers to have to enter the corner and slow way down, and it really is not it really doesn't help either driver. So if you're the overtaking car, you want to look ahead, plan your pass. Where am I going to catch that car that I'm closing in on? If I'm going to catch them right before the climbing S's at VIR, I can't pass there. I might as well fall back a bit and enjoy myself going up the climbing S's. If I'm going to catch them right after Oak Tree at the beginning of the back straight, or even in the middle of the back straight, perfect. I can go right around, big passing area. But don't forget to watch the mirrors. You may be closing on the car in front, but there may be a car behind closing on you. So, you have to be looking ahead and behind. And as the passing car, you have the majority of the responsibility. We could argue that it's 51-49 or whatever percentage you might like, but assuming the car giving the pass signal is predictable, you're the one taking the pass, going offline. You have the responsibility to make it safe. And that means if there's any doubt in your mind, do not take the pass. I can almost guarantee that every driver on this call will get a pass signal at VIR that's too late, that you should wave off. Do not take the pass signal if it's too late. There's no harm, no foul waving off. And what that looks like is this. if this is a pass somebody gave me literally in the braking zone for the bus stop at Watkins Glen, and I waved it off. Yeah, I just waved my hand back and forth across the windshield, and the driver can see in the rearview mirror, I'm saying, no, I'm not taking this pass. I got a pass signal in the next corner. So, don't take a late pass. There's no reward and potentially lots of risk.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah.
a lot of times you cannot see the wave off in the car.
Well, if you're looking in the rearview mirror, you should be able to see it. But yes, that's why it's important to wave vigorously. And you can't see it in this picture. My driving gloves, have white leather palms, so they show up to some extent. If you don't have gloves on, it's going to be harder to see. I agree, but it may not be seen. But even if the driver doesn't see it, they're going to realize sooner or later that you have not taken the pass, and they can move ahead accordingly.
Hey, Bill, question for you.
Sure.
I've seen some clubs where they'll allow the car being passed to signal with their turn indicators rather than a point. I'm assuming that you don't allow that?
No.
Our convention is to use, James, the arm out the window pointing straight out to the left or over the roof, as you saw in the examples. I know some clubs allow turn signals, and we do have one driver who's on the call tonight, Tim, who uses hand controls. So he does use the turn signals to give pass signals. The right turn signal to pass on the right, the left turn signal to pass on the left. We don't recommend that for other drivers. But yes, I have driven with clubs where they allow either or both. And,
Okay.
But our convention is to use the hand signals.
Just checking. I don't like it myself because I've accidentally hit that stick and I did not intend for a pass, so I didn't want to hit the stick.
Yeah. Well, that's
Bill?
one of the reasons that we aren't, we don't allow either or, but because it is possible to get a slightly bigger chance of a false signal. Yeah.
Bill, there's 3 drivers that are with that condition, this event.
Oh, okay. Was not aware of that. Okay.
Okay.
Well, that in the drivers meeting,
It'll be pointed out.
the drivers who will be using turn signals will mention that. But James, I'm glad you brought it up because everyone on this call now should not be surprised if they see a turn signal as a passing indicator. And again, if the right turn signal is on, that's an indication to pass on the right. If the left turn signal is on, an indication to pass on the left. Okay.
Bill, could I add one comment to this?
Sure, Al.
And really, James and everyone on the call, this signaling by hand, we try to do very carefully. And when you use your turn signal and that thing is blinking, no one's quite sure how many cars that means. Because I can assure you there are many times there's a car behind you that you see. There's a car behind that car that wants to come too. And so sometimes that signal goes on and the light's blinking, and I think, oh, that's 3, that's me too. Whereas if we're just using a hand signal, it's very clear that's 1 car, that's 2 cars. So our signals are the way we talk to each other as drivers. It's really the few ways we communicate. It's that and with our brake lights. So you want to be very clear with your signals so that that 3rd car isn't coming when you think 2 are coming, or the 2nd car isn't coming when you think 1 is coming.
Yep. Great. Yeah, that's absolutely right, Al.
Thanks.
Okay. So trains, the bane of many drivers' existence on track. They can be frustrating. They can make drivers impatient. So hopefully no one on this call will be that guy or gal. But, if you have more than 2 cars behind you, you're the cause of the train. Maybe it's temporary, but as Mike Carr and others have said, you're the choo-choo in the train. So if there's a bunch of cars behind you, you want to send them around as soon as you can. And there's lots of opportunities at VIR to do that. At the same time, a caution, especially for those of you that are newer, it's very easy when you see cars behind, oh, well, I'm going to kind of take my foot off the gas pedal and I'm going to send them around. Well, within reason, but if you take your foot off the gas and just put your arm out, you're going to get run over by the cars behind and the next set of cars. So there's a balancing act here. Your instructor is going to work with you on this, but if you're going too slow, you're going to generate more cars behind. And so if you're the car in the front of the train, your instructor is going to help you, manage all of that. But don't be surprised if that happens if you're a new student, because in green, yellow at VIR, we have drivers with a fairly wide variety of experience, as our poll indicated. And, there are some drivers who've never been on the track before, and there are other drivers who've been at VIR a few times before and maybe been on the track, other tracks as well. So there's going to be a big speed differential, and that's true in every group, by the way. There's nothing wrong with, being the slower car, having to give passes. We've all been there and had to do that, but just be aware that that's maybe going to be a big, steep part of the learning curve. Now, if you're in the middle of a train or in the back of one, now you have some choices to make. If all of a sudden a faster car catches you, you might want to send them around. They might get more pass signals quicker than you might. But you have to be patient in these long no passing areas at VIR. There's simply no passing regardless of what's going on. And you always have the option, which many people take advantage of, to roll through the pits at a modest pace and find some clear track. You can, if you choose, tell the chief instructor in the pits, about the train and give him the car numbers, but that's an option. But trains tend to be common early in an event, and they tend to work themselves out as people get more experience and more comfortable with the other cars on track. But I won't be surprised if we see some trains early at VIR.
Well, Bill,
Now, I'm going to play this video in a second.
Bill,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. My name is Alan. I'm one of your guests this weekend from the recent Toda region, and I'm sorry I didn't move quick enough to get my mute button off when you were talking about passing signals. I'll be one of the 3 doing turn signals because I'm in an enclosed cockpit Leger. The comments and observations that were made about passing were very good, but sometimes you can't. You have one person using control wheel controls on the wheel. I'm in a closed cockpit, so I have to use the turn signal. Some people like to use a window net, and then anybody with an open car is usually using arm restraints, and they really can't do it either unless it's a T-Rex. So the comment was, I think I'm quoting it correctly, if possible, use the normal arm point buys, but there are other cases where you just really can't, and you have to resort to the turn signal. And it should be mentioned at the driver's meeting, like you said. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. No, there's always situations do come up, but the turn signal is an exception, and those exceptions will be noted at the driver's meeting. Now somebody just posted a question. I see, John, you asked, can we just roll through the pits, or do we need to stop and talk to the chief? You can just roll through the pits. You don't have to stop and talk unless you choose to. You just have to roll through, and obviously the pit out person will tell you whether it's safe to go out or not. But no, if you're behind a train and you just want some clear track, just roll slowly through the pits. Sometimes I've seen people roll pretty quickly through the pits and they end up, catching the train right away. You don't want to be in a hurry rolling through the pits because, you may catch, people pretty quickly. But regardless, no, you don't have to stop at all. It's perfectly fine to roll straight on through. All right, so this is a train video with much more poor driving than good driving by the 3 cars in front. So we'll talk about it after we watch it, if I can get it to go here. This is entering turn 4. So this is a no passing area. So the car we're in just caught these 3 cars in front entering this section. And they obviously didn't see him because now we're entering a passing zone and there's no pass signals. And everybody's headed to the climbing S's. And the next passing area is after turn 10, which is the left-hander coming up. So the white car here gives a pass signal on the right, as he should. This driver, I don't know what he's thinking, giving a pass on the left there. This driver gets surprised and gives a signal in the middle of the turn, which he shouldn't, and almost goes off the track. So lots of poor driving in that example. Had, for example, one car given given a pass in the first passing zone, that might have been a good thing. The one car did give a proper pass signal. The second car that you saw give the signal on the left, apparently just decided, to bail out. He could have just easily driven through Oak Tree and given the passes, in the passing zone. And the last car got surprised, obviously, and almost panicked, giving a pass in the middle of the corner and then going off track. And by the way, on the wrong side. That's a pass on the left area. So passing and trains and cars behind can and do surprise people. And you shouldn't let it surprise what you like it did those drivers. Because multiple cars is a common enough situation that you're going to run into it. So if there's several cars behind, you can use those long passing zones to send, several cars around. You can use the other passing zones to send one car. And again, don't slow down any more than you have to. If there's several cars ahead of you, watch for the multiple pass signals. But again, don't automatically expect to pass. Wait for the signal, manage your approaching speed, present yourself squarely behind. If you're behind a car that's been given a pass signal, but you're behind them and not behind the car that gave the signal, they may not know you're there. And again, we have these long no passing zones, requires patience on the track. There's a etiquette and a rhythm to, giving a pass and taking a pass, but in a perfect world, both drivers kind of know what's going on. The driver is going to know maybe even before a corner, they're going to give a pass. They're going to drive through the corner, ignoring the car behind. They're going to track out normally, but then they're going to give a signal as soon as they can. But at VIR, I'm going to reemphasize, at Oak Tree, we track out, track left. We do not give a signal on the right, like the car did in the last video. We want to move to the right and then give a signal on the left. On the front straight, it's sort of the reverse. We enter the front straight, track out is on the left, but the straightaway kind of comes back to the right. So some drivers kind of feel like they want to come back to the right and give a pass signal on the left. Incorrect. Stay left, give a signal on the right. as you get better at this, you'll know how to judge the timing, and both drivers can anticipate, the what's going on. As you get experience, you're going to recognize other cars and what their tendencies are. If you're taking a pass, there's no reason to be on their bumper during the turn, but afterwards you want to be behind. And remember to take a little extra speed off for the next corner and avoid just fixating on that car because of the cars that are behind you. So an ideal pass, anticipates cars before and during, and gives space for both cars so that you can drive uninterrupted. And this can happen easily on the long passing areas. It can even happen on the shorter areas. Now, I see a question about, should we wave off the pass if it's on the wrong side? That's a hard one to answer because in general, I would say yes, but sometimes the driver's expecting you, and if you don't take the pass, it's going to generate a less safe situation. But as a general rule, if you can, I would wave it off. If you can do it in a way that the driver sees that you're waving it off, and then that would be the best. And you should either talk to that driver afterwards or let the chiefs know that that happened so that that driver knows what they did. Because as many times as we cover this, it's surprising to me, but lots of people miss the mandatory passing.
Hey, Bill, do you mind if I make a point about the waving off a pass?
No, go for it, Ken.
If you're going to wave off a pass, you brought up the point about the blind spots in your mirrors. Try to be where the driver in front can see you waving off the pass. If you're in the passing position and you're trying to wave off a pass, you may be in a blind spot and he may not be able to see you, which creates awkward and dangerous situations when you're trying, that driver's trying to slow because he thinks you're going to take a pass, that
Yep.
kind of thing.
No,
You want to be in position.
No, Ken, you're absolutely right. If you're not squarely behind the car, they're not going to see you wave it off. You've got to be right behind so they can see it in the rearview mirror. They're not going to see it if you're off to the side most of the time. You're right.
Hello, Bill. This is Alan again. Earlier, there was a comment about not being able to see a wave off if you're the lead car. And I've done a lot of on-track video, a lot of it. And one of the keys is leaning forward, not leaning forward, but extending your arm forward a little closer to the windshield. If you do it over the steering wheel, you're still in the shadow of the cockpit, and it doesn't really get seen through the glare of the windshield to the car in front. So to the extent that you can extend your arm and get as close to the inside of the glass, will ensure that the guy in front has a much better chance of seeing it.
Yep.
Wow.
Agreed. Okay. All right. So I'm going to skip this video in the interest of time. So just to wrap up this section, so we have a little bit of time for the turn by turn. To summarize what we've talked about, passing and traffic management is really essential to being both safe and having fun. Comes down to communication and cooperation. And I like the term etiquette because that kind of conveys the mindset that we want to have here. Every driver needs to know and respect the passing zones. Use mirrors, adjust for those low horsepower cars. If you're taking a pass, you got to be looking ahead and be patient. And everyone should remember, that's your friend or your classmate in the other car. So you got to think about it that way, consistent with being etiquette. Now, somebody just posted a question: if you don't take a pass signal, does the pass signal stay valid until the next passing zone? No. The passing signal is intended to be right now. And if you don't take it, then it's gone. So now, if a late pass is waved off, that driver should give a pass in the next passing zone. But no, it's just for the current passing area. All right. Other questions or comments before we shift gears and talk a little bit more about VIR specifics?
Bill, great job. I would just add one simple rule: when in doubt, don't. And the car that's passing has a duty and the responsibility to make it safe.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so, all right. Okay, so let me get this up so I can see it. Okay, so we talked about VIR and passing zones and so on. So we're going to do VIR turn by turn. If you have passing questions, obviously, ask those as we go through. I strongly, why is this doing this here? It's blocking my screen. Give me just 1 second. All right. All right, so there we go. So if you haven't read the turn-by-turn document that's on the website and you're not familiar with VIR, then the best piece of advice I can give you tonight is, get this document and print it out. If you can't find it on the website, send me an email and I'll send you the link. But it's in there's a turn-by-turn section in the driver's ed section of the NNJR website, and this document is there, and it's very detailed, been vetted by a whole bunch of folks, including all of the chief instructors. So there's a lot of detail here that, by the way, all the diagrams that you're going to see tonight are in this document. The first page I'm showing you is all text, but all the diagrams, not necessarily all the video shots, but all the diagrams are here with even more detail than I'm going to share with you tonight. So let me just introduce VIR with staging and pit out and track entry, which is really, really important for reasons you will see in a second. So I'm entering the track, getting ready to come onto a hot track, as you can see. The staging person stopped and is checking my armband. The pit out person held me up so that car could come in. Now I'm entering a hot track. The blend line, as we enter the track, we have to stay track right all the way to the apex of turn 1 for reasons that you will see here, because notice how fast cars are coming on my left as I'm trying to get up to speed on the track. So now I'm approaching the apex of turn 1, and I'm headed to turn 2. This is a passing zone between turn 1 and 2. So I send actually 2 cars around since I've just come out of the pit. So this is turns 2 into 3, and now we're going toward turn 4. So that's okay. So all right. So bear with me a second. For some reason, I am not getting. All right. It's I don't know. Anyway, I was looking for the chat window. It seems to have disappeared on me. So turn 1 at VIR. This turn confuses a lot of people. It's a very, very challenging turn. As you can tell from the overhead view, it's 180 degrees, actually a little more than that. And what you can't tell from here is that it's pretty much flat. There's a little bit of camber that's helpful here and there, but not that much. And so, and it's a pretty slow corner, but it's an increasing radius corner. So we want to slow down enough in the first half that we can begin to accelerate in the second half and accelerate up to turns 2 and 3. The apex is a lot of the curb. Many corners at VIR use not one point as an apex, but 5, 10, 20, 30 feet of the curb are as the apex. And turn 1 is one of those. We want to use at least 10 or 20 feet of the curb as the apex for turn 1. It's obviously a heavy braking zone coming in. So here's the braking zone for turn 1. Notice that we're going downhill actually, and then around the 2 marker or so that the track actually rises slightly. So we get a little bit of help from a small rise in the braking area here. But this braking area is not very grippy. It can actually at times be even slippery. So it's not a high grip area. And furthermore, there isn't a lot of asphalt, past the turn-in point. So if you come in here too fast and brake late, your options are limited. So this is not a corner to try to brake late. In fact, quite the opposite. You brake early, get the car set up so that you can exit the corner. Turn in, there's a nice arrow that's there you can use as a reference. And we're looking for the apex over where the white car is in front here. We're going to run along that curbing. You can even put the right side on that gray concrete. Don't put it on the green and yellow, but you can run right along the edge if you want of this apex. And then as we exit, we're going to go to mid-track plus or minus. And as we feed power on and head our way up to turn 2. Now, let me orient you here. We are going from top to bottom on this diagram. So, where we were in the previous, on this slide is at the top of this diagram. And so we're headed up. And so turn 2 is really a non-event. Yes, the road curves here, but we don't have to do much here. We're really focused on getting from turn 1 to turn 3, and turn 2 is a non-event in between. As we come around turn 1 and start to exit, notice all these trees on the left. As you come past those trees, you can see the tech barn, which is here. It's a little hard to see in this shot, but the tech barn comes into view. Well, that's a great reference to tell us when we want to turn the car slightly and make this arc through turn 2. Here's the apex of 2. Now you can see the tech barn more clearly. But now we're focused on this outside curbing that's up here. That's our turn-in point for turn 3. So this curbing is where we want to be to set up turn 3, which is also called NASCAR. And we want to run, along some of that curbing. We want to turn in around the end of that curbing, plus or minus, but roughly the end of that curbing. And notice the apex again. It's a long apex, kind of the second half of the curb here for turn 3. So here's the right side curbing. We want to we're braking as we come up here, and we can stay on the brakes a little bit, trail brake a bit as we turn in for 3, and then, but the car is not perfectly straight here, so we can't jump on the brake pedal. We have to be very smooth with both the brakes and the gas pedal here, because this corner is faster than it looks, and it's very challenging because that, keeping the car balanced through here is what we want to do, but not the easiest thing to do. So now we just turned in for turn 3. We're running along the curbing, for the apex, and we have this little tiny chute between 3 and 4, which is a passing zone on the left. If you give a pass there, be sure to give a lift. If you take a pass there, you are guaranteed to enter turn 4 offline. And turn 4 is the slowest corner on the track to begin with. So guess what? If you enter it offline, it's even slower. So plan that you're going to be out of shape, getting into 4 if you take a pass. So this complex, if you look at the map here with the red circle, well, look at the whole sequence, 4A, 4B, 5A, 5B, and so on. This sequence here sets up the whole back part of the track. As one early expert at VIR told me years ago, the straightaway that ends at Oak Tree starts in turn 4A. And if you're driving a Miata, that's roughly accurate, because in a low powered car, you can start accelerating in 4A and 4B here, put your foot on the floor and barely lift until you get to Oak Tree, a long, long ways from here. Now, most of us have more horsepower than that, but the point's the same. This is a very important corner, and one that's very easy to screw up. And one of the reasons is that 4A is a throwaway to set up 4B. So we have to apex the late part of the curbing. We can't track out though. We want to track out just in this left-hand half of the track so we can turn in and set up 4B and begin to accelerate out of 4B. And so this is a little dark, I apologize, but this is breaking into 4A. We're going to apex the curbing, the last part of the curbing on the left here, but we're not going to track out very far. And because we want to get in tight on the apex curb for 4B, which you see here on the right. And from this point, our steering wheel is turned a bit to the right, and we're feeding gas on, and we're going to drive basically one arc that's going to take us through 5A and set us up, for the whole following sequence. So that same arc that we were driving, after 4A through 4B, all the way along this little section on the left side of your screen, that same arc is going to take us to the apex of 5A here. And we can be feeding gas on. We may need a little bit of a lift, not a big one, a small one, to adjust the attitude of the car, depending on your car, to get lined up for this 5A. But if you look at the diagram, notice that if we get 5A correct, we can straighten out the rest of this and, plant the right foot pretty hard, if not on the floor. Getting 5A correct is really, really important for 2 reasons. One, it sets up the whole rest of the track. Number 2, if you screw it up, you're in big trouble, because if you overcook 5A and are going too fast, the results are not pretty. So this is a really important section. It's also a lot of fun. It's a challenging section, a lot of fun. So here we are approaching 5A on the right. We're out to track left here, and we're going to turn in a little bit before the end of this curbing, for 5A. Now you can see, the curbing and so on at 5A. Here's the trick at 5A. And if you don't remember anything else through this, remember this. You want the car when you're at the apex, we're almost at the apex here in this photo. We want the car pointed at the bridge. The bridge is hard to see down here. It's kind of dark, but the bridge is easy to see, when you're driving. It's straight ahead of us. If you're at the apex and you're looking at these trees, you have not turned enough and you cannot commit to the gas pedal. If you're looking at the bridge, now things are good, we can go. But if you're anywhere to the left of the bridge, it's time to be cautious until you get the car pointed right. And so getting the attitude, the angle of the car correct at this apex of 5A is really important. Once we do that, then everything else kind of falls into place. Now, let me back up make one other point. You can even put the right side tires on this curb if you want at 5A. I do not recommend curbs at VIR or most places as a general rule, but I'll make an exception here because for two reasons. It'll help straighten out the snake here a bit, but the other thing is the camber is actually favorable. There's actually a dip in the pavement here. So if your right side is on the curb, you actually get some favorable camber that's helpful. But the more important factor is being pointed at the bridge, because 5B, which is this left-hand curb that's right in front of the car in this picture, this curb is very unfriendly. If you hit this curb, you have a good chance of bouncing into a wall. So this is not a curb that we want to hit. So this curb we want to brush at most. We do not want to be on this curb. And from here on, it's pretty much foot on the floor and away we go. Now we come to what many people think is the signature piece feature of VIR, which is the climbing S's. And I see I've got the wrong slide here, but I apologize for that. So, all right, let's talk about the details. The secret to the climbing S's is in the entry. And in particular, what's called turn 7, which is this first left-hander. We want to take this correctly and it'll set up everything else. So let's talk about what that means. So as we're finishing the chute after the snake, notice this road on the right. This is the entrance to the north course. The turn in for turn 7, which is the left-hander here, the turn in is the end of this road right here. So where this access road finishes, and and this turn in is like turn the steering wheel 2 degrees to the left. It's very gentle. It's almost not a turn. In fact, David Murray doesn't even call it a turn. He says the climbing S's are simply 2 right-hand turns. But in practice, we have to kind of bend the car a little bit at this point. But if it helps you mentally to say there is no left-hand turn, that's fine too, because it really isn't a turn. It's just bend the car slightly toward the left as we approach. Here is that curbing for turn 7. The key thing here is the white paint after this curbing. We want the car lined up straight, alongside this white paint on the left. We're going to put the car here before we turn right for the right-hand turn. So now in this picture, we're almost, but not quite to the point where we're going to turn right. We're just basically going straight right along this white line. And then, as it's hard to see in this picture, but as kind of near the end of this straight white line, the road begins to rise. There's a hill. And when your front end bites into that hill, it's time to turn. And we turn right, whoops, we turn right. And as we do that, we go squarely over the top of this rise. In other words, we're hitting the hill at 90 degrees, the car's nice and planted. We want to apex the second half of that curve. And now again, it's a left-hand turn, but it's almost not a turn. It's just a slight bend to the left. And we're really focused on the right-hander at the top here. So the latter part of this curb on the left, run along that curb for a ways like we do on all of these. The turn 9 at the top of the hill, kind of the middle part of the curb as an apex. And this is a very fast section, but it requires great rhythm and timing to get it right. And that's why I stressed at the beginning, getting the entrance correct. When you get it right, it's a lot of fun. But if you get it wrong and get out of sequence, you're going very fast. Now, this corner can be so fast that, let me back up. This is turn 9.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah.
when you're going up the climbing S's, are you maintaining speed or are you accelerating as you go up?
You're accelerating.
Okay.
Not necessarily super hard. I mean, if you're a student driver, you should be feeding gas on because the car wants to be planted. It wants some gas. It wants some gas on to plant the back of the car. If you're going to slow down, you do that before you enter or right before turn 7 at the bottom. If you're going to brake or lift, and then you feed gas on as you come up the hill. And in fact, we can come up the hill so fast in turn 9 here that we track out all the way to track left, which is a problem because then we can't get back to the right side of the track. So we have to manage our exit from turn 9 to kind of be mid-track to set up for turn 10. Turn 10, South Bend, it's the fastest corner at VIR. It's also the most dangerous corner because if you get into it too early or too fast and lift, you're going to hit a tire wall at a very fast pace. On the other hand, there's all kinds of space here. So if you get in too fast, you can easily drive off. But we've fished too many cars out of the tire wall here. So the South Bend deserves a great deal of respect. That said, it's a fantastic corner when you get it right. So we want to approach it in this little tiny chute between turns 9 and 10. We want to be track right or almost all the way track right. And we want to brake in a straight line here. Too many people carry the brakes into the first part of the corner. This is not a trail brake corner. Brake in a straight line as we finish the braking and come off the brakes and turn in. We turn in when we see the beginning of the curb. That's a reference to turn in. We're going to actually apex the first part of the curb, but we turn in back on some gas. We want the back end of the car planted here. Your foot may not be on the floor. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that we want to be on some gas, and then as we approach the apex, we can progressively and smoothly feed the gas on. We're going to apex, kind of the first part of the curb here, first third or thereabouts. What happens at track out here is the road, actually, the camber falls away. So the first time you drive this, you're going to say, oh my God.
Go ahead, cherry pie.
Huh? I'm sorry? So the road tends to fall away here. So we want to be smoothly and gently feeding gas on to plant the car, but we don't want to overcook it because the track actually doesn't help us as we get toward track out here. But very fast corner and lots of fun to drive. Now looking from track out here, we're looking at turn 11, the first half of Oak Tree in front of us. notice it's a straight line from the track out of turn 10 to the turn in for turn 11 up here. The road bends, but we're just basically going to go straight down the hill and up the hill.
Hey, Bill, can
Yeah.
I make a point about that turn 10?
Yep.
It's one of those turns where you don't want to crowd the driver in front of you because you don't want to be forced to brake or change your steering input as the car becomes light as you crest the hill there.
Yep.
So it is very, you need to be very cautious on that turn.
Yep. Absolutely right. So here's Oak Tree, the turn 11, 12 complex. This is basically a double apex, the 180-degree turn, but it's a lot more than that. Turn 11 is much faster than turn 12. And it may not seem that way at first, but trust me, it's much faster than turn 12. And if you look at the map carefully, you can see that 12 is actually sharper than 11. What that doesn't show you is that 11 is banked in a favorable fashion and 12 is banked in an unfavorable fashion, and at the worst possible point. So this is a very tricky, complex, very challenging, and lots of fun to get right. So how do we do it? We're approaching, coming up a hill. We're going to slow down a lot here because we just finished a very fast section of the track, but they've conveniently given us a nice hill leading into turn 11. So we can slow down the car a lot right into that hill with some braking and carry it's still a reasonable amount of pace through turn 11. The turn in is actually the one reference. So forget the arrow up here. I don't know why the arrow's there. The one is the turn in point for turn 11. We're just basically going to make an angle from here across the middle of this apex to the outside of the track. And so we're going to go kind of across, the middle of the apex here. We're looking here at the outside of the track because we want the car as far out as we can get, not on the curb, but out against the curb on the left side. So we want the car out here to set up for 12. And conveniently, unless something's changed since last year, there's a nice sealer patch here that shows you where you want to be because that's where everybody else has been. But we want to line the car up here, and we're going to want to slow down here. And that's a good thing because by putting on some brake, that'll help the car turn. We're going to put on some brake and we're going to turn. And this is a sharp corner. And so somewhere between where we are in this picture and this one, we are turning the car a lot. This is a slow corner, fast hands. We're going to crank the wheel to the right here. This is not a place to be timid with the steering wheel. Crank the wheel to the right and do it with a little bit of brake on to help the car turn. So because we're approaching the apex now, we need to get the car turned through that sharp corner. And here's another key angle or attitude of the car to be aware of. When you're at the apex of Oak Tree, you should be pointed at or to the right of this flag station. It's a little hard to see here against the trees, but there's a flag station right in front of us. We want the car pointed to the right or at a minimum at that flag station when we're at the apex. If we're pointed to the left, we haven't turned the car enough and we can't get on the gas. If we've got the car pointed at the flag station or further, now we can feed gas on and begin to accelerate out. And we want to track out in the second half of the curve as we come out of Oak Tree. Tough corner, but a lot of fun. So that at the end, after Oak Tree, obviously is that long back straight that you saw in the one video, seems to go on forever. At the end of that long back straight is a sequence of corners. The the beginning of which is called the roller coaster. And to orient you, that long back straight is coming in from the right and going to the left here on the screen. So, we're actually coming up a hill in what's called turn 13. We have this right-hander called turn 14, and then we have this left-hander called turn 15. And 14 is a compromise corner to set up 15. So what does that look like? Well, here's the end of the back straight. Again, conveniently a hill to help us slow down. So we can brake fairly late and use the hill to help us slow down. We're going to brake as we come up the hill. We're going to modulate the brakes a little bit and bend the car to the left as we get near the top of this hill, but before the top, to help the car bend left for turn 13. Because we want the car, as we come up the hill here, we want to be pointing to the left-hand half of the track here. We don't necessarily have to be all the way track left, although there's nothing wrong with that. But, we want to be on the left-hand half of the track here. That's why we're bending the car. And we're doing that to set up turn 14, which is the right-hander. 14 is a long apex, and we basically want to follow the apex curving, not from the very beginning, but from about here, a few feet after the beginning, most of the way around. We're just going to follow that curve and not try to track out or do anything else until we get to the end of it or near the end of it, because now we can see the left-hander 15 in front of us. And guess what? From this point, we can turn the car left and get on the gas and go, because as we come down the hill here, guess what? The compression, helps the car. We can squeeze the gas on and we can accelerate down this short chute between 15 and 16. So this is a fun section. It's a lot easier than the earlier connected corners. A lot of fun when you get it right. That's followed quickly by 16. They call this hog pen, this section, but this is, how do I describe it? We're going downhill here. So as you come through 16A towards 16B, it literally feels like you're falling off the edge of the world, because the car is literally falling underneath you as you come down. This is a steep hill. It's a very steep hill. So the way we drive this, there's this curbing on the outside of the chute. We aim for that. We turn the car, we bend the car toward the apex, and then we brake gently as we approach the apex of 16A. And we slow the car down, and we want to be aiming for the second half of this curb, and we're going to follow the second half of this curb. We're going to turn for 16B about the time our shoulders, give or take, are at the end of the curbing here. So someplace near the end of the curbing here, we're going to turn right for 16B, and you can see in this picture how steep the hill is, how much is falling away. And we're going to turn. We can begin to squeeze the gas on as we go down the hill here. And as we make this turn into 16B, we can feed more gas on, and we're feeding onto the front straight. 17 is up in front of us here. We don't have to apex that. We can be anywhere from a couple of feet to a car width off of 17. We basically want to straighten out this as much as possible. So that's one lap around. A couple of key points. Turn one is slower than it looks, and so is Oak Tree. It's easy to overdrive turn 4. And as we talk, South Bend deserves a lot of respect. So I've talked too long, but questions, comments? It's a long track and there's a lot going on. So I'm afraid it may, for those of you that are new, may seem like a lot. but your instructor is going to help you with that. And I'll reiterate that we do have that nice written document that you can study at your leisure. So questions, comments? Everybody's got it nailed, right?
I've been scribbling the whole time.
Good. Well, hopefully what's in that written document and what I tried to emphasize here will complement each other's, but that I'm glad to hear that's the right way to approach it. I think I may have more notes. Well, I think I have more notes on Watkins Glen than I do on VIR, but I have definitely more notes on VIR than any other track, with the possible exception of Watkins Glen. And I've been at Watkins Glen, several times, many more times than I've been at VIR. But there's a lot to learn. And for those of you that have been at Watkins Glen or other tracks, VIR, while it's the same length within a tenth as Watkins Glen, it is a very different track simply because of the connected corners. And so it very challenging in its own right. I love both tracks, just a matter of figuring it out. Okay.
Yeah, Bill, this is Skip Silvers, and first time with you. Just one comment on if a point buy is given on the wrong side, I would encourage waving it off extremely, because frequently wrong side point buys are given by very nervous green students. And when they realize their mistake, they want to jump back to the right side of the track so they can correct the mistake, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do.
No, I agree. I mean, in general, I would wave it off. There can be exceptions, but as a general rule, absolutely. Somebody's asking about passing zones different for different groups. The red run group and the black run group will be running expanded passing. So that means basically they can pass pretty much anywhere, with a signal. Now, in practice, the only difference that makes is that there will be, they'll use the chute coming down the hill between the roller coaster and hog pen, and they may use the sections between 1 and 3 a little more than the student groups. But in practice, the passing zones are not very different, because no group is going to pass between 4A and the exit of the snake. Nobody's going to pass in the climbing S's. It is possible in black or red for cars to pass between 9 and 10 if there's a fast car behind. But in general, the passing zones are not that different, to answer that question. Okay, other questions, comments? Minimum height for the roller coaster. I love it now. That's Adam. Okay. Okay. Well, I will see all of you at VIR. I will try to make myself available if you have questions, but those of you who are students, you will have an instructor with you who will be working with you. So they'll be there to answer any and all of your questions. But like I said, I'll be around, as will other chief instructors, and we'll be encouraging you to, if you have any questions, to certainly ask. I will also point out quickly that we will be having at VIR a mentor for each run group, and that person will be another resource that you can reach out to if you have any comments or questions or concerns or suggestions that you want to pass along. So I encourage you to take advantage of that as well. Thank you for hanging in there. I apologize we went a little longer than I had intended, but hopefully you found it useful. And I will see all of you at VIR.
All right, thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. That was great.
Nice job, Bill.
Good
Thanks,
job.
Bill. Good night, all.
Have a
Thanks,
safe
Bill.
trip.
Good night, my friend.